Ja, men vi går vidare då och introducerar eBay. Ni blev så rörd.
Ja,
Ni killar, så så jag gör så. Om du går och sätter dig så introducerar jag eBay helt enkelt. eBay was founded in the middle of the 90s and is one of the successful companies who's proven that the so-called IT bubble wasn't all evil. eBay is a multi-billion-dollar business. Today's speaker is a part of the European leadership team and started at eBay in 2009. We want to give a big hand to Nicholas Illidge.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you very much. And it is an absolute pleasure to be back in Sweden and also in Stockholm. Over the last 12 months, I spent quite a few visits here dealing with our own business, Tradera, here in Sweden, working on a number of their exciting plans in terms of what they're developing here, and our team are on the front row. Obviously giving me a lot of support here, but thank you, just welcoming them. And the other thing that's really nice about Sweden is it reminds me how I keep making the same mistake over and over again. So I arrived last night in the hotel, relatively late, and I keep forgetting that you are blessed at this time of year with lots of sunlight. And not putting down the blackout blinds for about the 4th time running during the summer means that I have very limited sleep. So if I make any mistakes, it's due to the excessive sunlight that you get at this time of the year. So I'd like to share some thoughts with you around what is happening across the global marketplace in terms of commerce and what we refer to as the Omni-Channel retail world. Just try to see if we can move the slide on, please. There we go. Okay. I think it's clear to say that consumer behavior is driving drastic change within the marketplace. But I think one thing that, whether it's online or offline within retail, that is very significant is consumer expectations. And I'm sure on a conference like this you will talk about what the consumer expects. But the one thing that is absolutely certain is that consumer expectations are increasing. And they're increasing because they expect more. And that places a huge burden on organizations whose business is based on consumer business. They're expecting significantly better service. But the good news for everyone that's involved in commerce is that better service will inspire loyalty. And if you drive loyalty, as you know, particularly in e-commerce, you will receive recommendations. And those things lead to business. So for the next 15 or so minutes, I would like to talk you through some of the trends that we're seeing across eBay as a global commerce player. We'd like to talk to you about some of the impact that over our 110 million shoppers globally have seen. And also, we'd like to share with you some exciting case studies where eBay's work with its merchant partnership around the world have driven some quite spectacular results in terms of developing an omni-channel presence. So, I'm sure everyone is familiar with the trends that we see within the internet. And this slide and what I'm saying now is not about the scale. It's more about where the opportunity lies. We've seen from 2000 to 2012, right now at the exit of last year, over a third of the world are connected. Staggeringly, we'll see in 2020, that number will be almost 66%. It's worth just taking a step back and seeing where that is. Now, of course, that growth is not coming from the Western developed markets of e-commerce. That is coming from the developing markets that are providing an exciting opportunity for any organization of any scale, any size, depending on what merchant you are, whether you're a small, medium, or large merchant, to be able to get access to such a large marketplace. But someone told me that the number for 2020, a really interesting fact, that is the same as the population of the world in 1987. So the human population is exactly the same now in 2020, predicted in terms of internet users. So connection, access to the web is moving at a scale that's unprecedented. And when we consider what's playing the role, technology is really at the hub of much of this. And fundamentally, this is changing the way consumers shop. Whether, the traditional store location still has a very relevant role today in commerce, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later. But then when you talk about social media, you talk about online loyalty programs, we talk about online payments, all these different ways that a consumer can now access various merchandise. So merchandise is now more accessible, it's more convenient, it's more local, and it's more global. But fundamentally, a big change that we see at eBay is that consumers are demanding more relevance. They expect organizations that sell to them to understand them. And right at the heart of all of this trends that we're seeing is the blurring between the divides between offline and online. In our view, these have gone, and it's one world, and it's called commerce. And at the heart of this is the mobile device. At eBay, at the end of 2012, we transacted over $13 billion of mobile commerce. We'd estimated in our own budgets and forecasts to have a number nearer $10 billion. So it was over 30% higher than we had forecast. But interestingly, the 2012 number of $13 billion was actually double the mobile transaction volumes that we saw in 2011. And when you dissect that number and we look at some of the consumer behaviors, there are two trends that we see. One is a trend that we call snacking. And that is where a consumer will have small, bite-sized chunks of shopping each day. And the repeat buying that you see and the desire for greater selection and convenience in that trend is quite amazing. And then the other one is showrooming. And one of the things that the mobile technology combined with the web has given is transparency. Consumers today have an unparalleled level of transparency into price and selection. And we see research that we've recently commissioned shows that 48% of all tablet users actively do showrooming. So they are doing incredible amounts of research and comparison before making a purchase. And the figure for smartphones is very similar. It's 45%. And they are statistics that we need to build into our strategies when trying to meet consumers, because mobile is right at the very heart of this. I talked about the blurring of the lines between offline and online commerce. And you can just see there, in terms of the numbers, that in 2008, the commerce market was estimated to be around $325 billion, of which a small segment in 2008 was transacted online. At the end of last year, we see a shift away from offline onto online, and in terms of also what we call web influenced. So web influenced would be where a transaction would have some form of e-commerce, whether it's at the back end or the front end in that transaction. And as we go into 2013, we believe that you shouldn't look at those offline, online. You should look at one thing, and that is commerce. Because when you look at that, the size of the opportunity is significant. That is a $10 trillion market globally in terms of consumer behavior and consumer transactions. eBay roughly has over 2% of that market globally, with $175 billion transacted across all eBay's properties. And I think the other challenge for suppliers of all kinds, anyone who operates with a consumer face, is the initial cost of entry is lower than ever. And consumers have access to more information than ever before. So just because you had a traditional presence on the high street or even on the web, your position is constantly under threat unless you're adapting to those consumer changes. And I think this is the biggest challenge of all. We talked about the consumer. Well, the consumer, of which we all want, as well as being involved in this particular industry, is they want it all. So not only do they want the value and price and the transparency of that, but they want things faster and they want things more conveniently. And you can see from some of the statistics that we see up there that 2/3 of all consumers are going to choose the most economical solution in terms of shipping. And the expectations on things like overnight shipping are rapidly increasing. So our ability to be able to combine a traditional logistics capability with an online transaction is really connected now and is very, very relevant. And a very emotive subject, particularly in soft goods, are returns. You look at some of the online rates of return, particularly for some of the pure plays in fashion, you're talking in excess sometimes of over 40%. That is an incredible business model to be able to serve in terms of the cost of sale. And it's easy to understand. You have to have a returns policy that is easy to understand and actually follows through. And then finally, when we talk about shipping services, consumers are being even more demanded. We see trends in Germany and in the UK and the United States where consumers will pay an absolute premium for doing a purchase where they can specify the time of delivery. Now that is an added complication, but it is a level of expectation that the market is now driving in terms of being able to be served. So let's take a quick look at eBay and in terms of eBay's business. The number at the top left-hand side is the number of active buyers who actively buy on the eBay platform on a weekly basis. So our number at the moment is 116 million. Everyone within the eBay Marketplace's organization is very much focused on that number. And we have a very ambitious plan to double that number by the end of 2015. We operate on a global basis across 32 different countries. We also saw, as you've seen, significant growth in our mobile business. Less about the actual transactions, but if you take one of our developed markets, our number 3 market in the world is the UK. And in the UK, every single second, a transaction is going place on our mobile application. That's a mobile application that has stayed within the top 10 Apple iTunes app downloads since it basically came live. And it's 162 million downloads on a global basis. And then just some stats on your perception, maybe, of eBay as an organization. You can see the significant shift away from the auction format to the buy it now format. So that's new in-season goods listed on eBay. So you can see that over 72% of all items on our global platform are actually fixed price. And that gives you the option to be able to buy it now. So what does that mean? I think the way of bringing this together is to look at a couple of examples of where eBay has partnered with some of our retail brands and retail partners. About 3 years ago, we developed a capability called merchant development. And the central part of our proposition in working with merchants is partnership. We will never compete in terms of partnering with organizations. And so now within Europe, we have a business that transacts over $5 billion with retailers and brands. And that comes from roughly about 2,500 organizations where we provide account management and we provide partnership in driving mutual sales. But let's have a look at a couple of examples. So one of the case studies that I want to share with you is one of our partners that we signed up recently, which was BMW, a highly prestigious brand, one of the top 10 recognized brands in the world. But they were relatively new at the time to e-commerce. And in fact, the development of their shop on eBay was their first business-to-consumer excursion. And we partnered with them in terms of our experience around internet marketing, in terms of the look and feel, and the control of their store. And they drove some quite spectacular results. So they opened their store in 2011, and they offered parts and accessories directly from the manufacturer to eBay's car enthusiasts. In terms of a category, the parts and accessories category is one of our largest within eBay, and we do have significant loyalty and community around the parts and accessories business. BMW wanted to get access to those types of buyers. But what was really interesting about this, despite the success that they had on eBay, was the awareness that it drove around BMW's own direct store. And in fact, over this period between 2011 and 2012, through the eBay channel, over 40,000 incremental users went to the BMW website, and they saw a 4x increase in sales of their own web products. That's why we call this partnership. This is why the success when we work with merchants and brands is very much mutual. The next example that I'd like to share with you is that of the House of Fraser. House of Fraser has over 70 stores in the UK and has some global infrastructure as well, and also as one of the most, in terms of the house of brands, has one of the most successful e-commerce stories on the high street today. So the House of Fraser, they partnered with eBay, and one of the things that they wanted to do was increase sales in specific lines of goods that they had, particularly their own branded goods within store. And so we used a combination of marketing levers, which we'll look at later, which drove traffic to the House of Fraser store on eBay. But significantly, when you look at the intention to buy and the intention to visit statistics, it drove significant increases to their own stores, that's their physical bricks and mortar stores, and their own website. And these were the kind of channels that we used in terms of that. You could argue that the eBay homepage is certainly one of the most expensive, but one of the most viewed pages in terms of internet real estate. So what we provided was, we gave them access to something that we call a homepage takeover that allows us to land and target specific traffic to their own store. And we did that very successfully. We worked with them as well on a very dedicated direct mail email campaign. And also, we did some significant keyword targeting. One of our great expertise is in terms of internet marketing, and we were able to drive specific activity and results with their merchandise on the site. And these are the results which I think were fairly spectacular. And as I said, ignore the actual sales that were significant. We're talking multi-million dollars of sales over a 12-month period. But these were the statistics that actually built our relationship. If you look, 14%, that's the highest level of purchase intent at the House of Fraser store. It went up by 14% as a result of the traffic. We have 18 million active buyers in the UK that we provided access to. We also have an incremental 47 million active buyers in Europe. And 25% also in terms of the highest level of visit intent at the eBay outlet and also their own store. And these were two things that were interconnected. But a statistic that is relevant to this audience and where we are today is that over 20% of the sales on the eBay store came from Scandinavia. And of that, 80% were from Swedish buyers. So that shows you the scale of global purchasing and the fact that many buyers, wherever they're located, are now looking at global merchandise. So finally, the omni-channel retail opportunity. I think embracing the multiple channels and the multiple geographies will give you access to shoppers and products from everywhere. There is no question about that, but they have to be combined and it has to be a considered strategy. Giving you access to new markets has its challenges, and we need to be aware of what the consumer actually wants. Things like logistics are fundamentally important for driving loyalty and repeat purchase. And I think one of the things as a community, particularly in commerce, that we must aspire to be is actually be as simple as the traditional local store. Be as simple to shop and as accessible as that local store, which over hundreds of years have built up trust and repeat purchasing. We have 110 million shoppers worldwide, and I'd love the opportunity of being able to share with you more some of the insights and the opportunities that this can potentially give you. Our team from Tradera are here. If anyone is particularly interested in looking at what the opportunities we can drive from Sweden or cross EU or global commerce, then we'd be more than happy to talk. And I look forward to answering your questions later. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicholas. Any questions, Anders?
Yeah. How do you set up your own shop at eBay? Is it only for like big companies like BMW?
No.
No?
No. So we have over 4 million sellers globally, worldwide. Setting up an eBay shop, depending on the scale and size, is relatively simple. And you can either work with third parties. We have a very vibrant and live ecosystem of partners that will support the creation and the design and building. As you get more complex and you're building omni-channel, then obviously you need to integrate eBay's front end with your own back end processes. So you
can start very simple.
Yeah.
And then you can.
That's right. Yeah, you can scale up accordingly depending on ultimately where you're sourcing the product from.
Who should look into this? What type of products? I mean, we have loads of retailers and e-commerce owners here.
Well, I think it's fair to say that one of our core value propositions on eBay is selection and traffic. And no matter what market you are in, we will have consumers that are focused on that. And that is eBay's unique proposition. Whether it's the core universal appeal of fashion, consumer electronics, all the way down to the long tail in terms of long-term tail of selection, in terms of collectibles. Anyone can look into this, whether it's a brand. And what I would say, if there are any brand owners, a brand owner could get direct access to consumers via the eBay platform. We hear this all the time from organizations that own brands. They want to get closer to the consumer and the changes that are happening.
You're also telling us that Buy It Now is growing.
Yeah.
And yesterday we had an excellent speech about Amazon. How do you position yourself towards Amazon?
Sure. I think Amazon is an awesome company. I think Amazon is a fearsome competitor, and most people at eBay have the deepest respect for what Amazon do. The one differentiation between Amazon and eBay is Amazon is a retailer, whereas eBay is a partner in retail and in commerce. So we will never compete with you if you are supplying goods online. we will partner with you. And that's the fundamental competitive difference.
Any questions from Don or Lena?
I actually do have one. You said that consumers were becoming more and more demanding, and you
Yes.
mentioned delivery and returns, for example. And I'm wondering, spontaneously, as a consumer, I think that you at eBay have comparatively little influence on those two variables, since it's the seller
Sure.
that influences that. So what are you going to do to meet those demands then?
I think that statement would be correct, say, 5 years ago. And I think one of the things we recognized was that the standard of service on the marketplace needed to improve. So what we created was the Trusted Seller Program, where delivery over a certain time period and quality of delivery, and that consumers receive what they've actually bought in terms of the description, is accurate. And of course, working with larger merchants and brands, we're able to leverage their own existing their logistics system. One organization that you may be aware of is Tesco's. And one of the things Tesco said to us when we opened an outlet store on eBay was they expected the eBay store to deliver the same quality of service as any one of their other channels. So when you get that level of commitment from a brand and a retailer, we're already in a win-win situation. It isn't always the case, but I think it's a very good question, because a marketplace, it's about partnership. And we put policy and regulation in, but we can't enforce.
Will you change the brand in Sweden? Do you work with different brands in other countries as well?
Yes, we do. Yes, yes. So the Tradera brand is a strong brand in our Swedish market. We have no intention of changing that brand. And I think the other thing to bear in mind is that we work with multiple different online marketplaces. So in Turkey, our business is Gidi. That gives us access to 60 million Turks, all with a mobile device, incidentally. We work with Brands for Friends in Germany, and we have multiple different classifieds formats as well across the world. So eBay, the way you should think about this is it's powered by eBay in terms of the infrastructure. We see no point in changing a brand when it has local relevance.
We're running out of time.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Nicholas, for coming.
Thank you. Thank you very much.